All right, GM CryptoSapiens, and we are back for the fourth and final installment of the OpenRank mini-series, of which we've been recording. We started with Sahil and Gloria, we continued with Darmi, we introduced Mo, and now we have Gloria back, and two of my colleagues from the Farcaster community. We have Pichi and Jonathan, both hosts also of channels, Anime Manga, Nature, and myself, CryptoSapiens. And we're going to be talking about the actual implementation of everything that we've introduced in these first 3 episodes, and talk about really the genesis of our channels and community building, and how channel tokens have allowed us to enable a new way to engage our community and reward them too. So with that, GM, everybody, how are we all doing today?
GM, Humpty.
GM, sunny West Coast day.
And Pichi, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm good, GM, everybody. It's great to hang out with you guys and get to talk, the fruition of all this channel stuff that we've all kind of been doing in stealth mode in the background. And now that it's public and live, I'm really excited to dig into the weeds of how this came to be and what we're doing with it now and what it's going to look like in the future.
Let's get started. And Gloria, co-lead with this with me, please. If I'm missing anything, jump in and let us know. But I think based on the conversations we had before recording this, I think it's going to be a good idea for us to talk about just generally our community building experience on Farcaster specifically, and why did we start a channel? And then we can kind of dig into why did we launch a channel token. So Jonathan, I can see in your excitement that you're ready to go. Tell us, why Nature? Why a channel on Farcaster?
Let me back it up to when I joined last February. Lost in the Sauce, Inceptionally, who you might know. He said, "Hey, I want to start a channel. I'm going to call it I Took a Photo. Will you co-host it with me because you're a photographer?" We did that for a while. Then I started Light Chasers, and then I took over Nature from Dan, who said, "Hey, who wants this channel?" It was a dream channel for me, and that's when Nature really started to come to life. Being a landscape photographer, Nature was like a dream channel. A lot of hard work bringing the channel from a very spammy feed to, inviting a lot of great photographers and artists into the channel. And I've grown it from 7,000 followers to 15, currently about 3,500 members who are casting in the channel. Exciting part is the engagement of the channel. It had become a top 20 channel on the Farcaster network, and it kept creeping up top 15. But after implementing the channel token, our engagement has gone from, let's say, a top 10-ish channel rising up the ranks, currently like number 6 in engagement on the Farcaster network.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's amazing to hear. But Pichi, I'd love to hear from you, because personally, I would say I'm more familiar with anime manga, but that might be a bias, that instead of going outdoors and touching grass and maybe taking a photo and sharing it on Nature, I am a huge anime and manga nerd. So I love following the conversations that are happening in your channel. Tell us why you chose to create a channel on Farcaster.
I never intended to create channels on Farcaster. I joined Farcaster a year ago yesterday, and I was looking for my place. I know, it's like, yay, Farcaster anniversary. What do we call that? On Reddit, it's Cake Day. Like, is it your Fariversary? Like, is there an official term? I don't know. This is exciting.
A Farversary.
A Farversary. I love it. So yeah, I came here and I started posting, in random channels that I had topical stuff of. And I found that there was a channel that was, about topics I cared about. And I started posting there. And a bunch of people liked my art when I shared it after the Outcast release. I made an anime version of a couple of those things. People asked if they could buy it. I did an auction for some pieces. And then a lot of people in these topical channels asked if I would create more PFPs that were, anime themed. They could all have one. So I started working on that project. And in the meantime, I got a DM from this guy named Dan that I didn't know who this was. And he told me to stop posting in that channel because I was a troll and a bully. And I didn't know what he was talking about. But apparently the channel host did not like that I was an AI artist and not a real artist. And when this person found out I was doing AI art, they didn't want anything to do with me and complained very loudly on Farcaster that I was invading their channel and doing whatever. So he told me, cast in a different channel. So since the protocol was open and permissionless, I decided to make my own channel. And that's how anime manga started. And it was not intentional. It was because I didn't have a place to talk about topics I loved. I was doing an anime NFT that was about to drop, I don't know, in maybe 6 days. And I had to find a new place to talk about it. So I started Anime Outcast and Anime Manga so that I had a project-specific channel and I had a channel where I could talk about topics I cared about. I used to work in the anime industry, so being told on an open protocol that I couldn't talk about something I was an expert in felt really stupid to me. This is where, the rubber meets the road. You either leave or you lean in. And I decided I'll just create my own space. I'll build my own tables. I don't think anybody should be left out. And I think if you don't like the way a channel is run, you should run your own channel. And if it's a competitor channel, may the best channel win. And I've done a lot to ensure that that channel is fun and engaging and that people feel valued and seen and that they feel rewarded. And I used to do a lot of that reward manually, and it took up a lot of my time. So I've always been actively looking for a way that the channel could be self-sustaining and the community could govern itself instead of depending on me to decide what's good content and what's bad content. Because I don't really like that on a global level. I wish more that the community had a say of what content's the best, it should rise to the top, and the content that's not so great should just fall to the bottom. So I've always been looking, how could I automate this? How could I make it where the community's voice matters more than mine? And that's when I really started paying attention to what Cura was doing when they said, we're focused on who's inside the channel and their influence inside the channel. So it doesn't matter if the Warpcast algorithm loves you. It doesn't matter if any one particular algorithm loves you. It matters how much original content and dedication you put into a channel and how much the other members of that channel value your contributions. And that really aligned with my own personal thesis. And when I realized that they were building a full-fledged, not only moderation tool, but a way to reward that content, I had to be a part of this. I just couldn't pass it up.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I'll say we've had Sahil on here and he is the king of long answers. So yours was actually quite brief. I did also want to say very spicy and I love it. And anybody who said we don't want AI art here, not going to make it because I feel like AI has been the narrative for quite some time. And personally, as a creator, I leverage AI as well in my own process. And I feel like there's so many different ways of utilizing it. But if people are using it thoughtfully and are upfront about how it's used, I have no problem with it. Right. So I wonder where that channel is now because I know that anime manga certainly has been very successful. I wonder if, Jonathan, you could explain a little bit about how you've seen incentives and rewards play out in your channel. Pichi kind of gave us a bit of a historic look, not just at how and why she created the anime manga channel, but also how she saw rewards play into the channel growth. How have you seen rewards? What are some of the things that you've done in the Nature channel to grow and incentivize your community?
I think originally, the incentives were me taking my entire allowance of degen and spreading it across the channel, right? And, Nature is a big channel. So it's very labor intensive. And I was doing it by myself for quite some time. And, then Moxie came along and, it was like a better version of degen because the engagement itself created the rewards, right? So there's a lower friction model. When I started talking to Gloria and the team at Cura, I realized that they had a better mousetrap, right? Because people are going to get rewards, right? And without the friction, just like Moxie, but a little bit different, their own version of it. And when we looked at the channel data, it seemed very much in line with reality in the channel. It became a low friction and seemingly fair playbook, of how we could, create an extra layer of rewards, right? Because people are still getting, degen tips. They're still getting, some kind of moxie thing. It's evolved, so it's a little more convoluted now. And of course, now they're getting the nature token. So, and the whole idea was to create an extra layer of rewards for people.
I really like that framing, and I'll tell you why. If anyone's listened to episode 3 before jumping onto this one, they'll see that that's exactly the view that OpenRank has had. And I know personally I have had when I was providing feedback to OpenRank in terms of channel tokens and what they could be. We talk about degen kind of starting something in terms of the community incentive piece that bootstrapped and eventually grew the community outside of just like what was happening on Farcaster, which is really great to see. Moxie, absolutely, to your point, in terms of what they've been able to do for connecting people to one another and connecting that narrative, although a bit loosely, to their channels, right? And to what's happening in channels. Channel tokens now, of course, it goes a layer deeper than all of that, where it's integrated through the Farcaster data and through your activity and the engagement that's happening on Farcaster. I'm going to share a little bit about my story, obviously, because I'm one of the 3 channels here that is having this conversation. I started CryptoSapiens years ago. This is something that I've been building for over 3 years. And I started it primarily because I believe that crypto needs to be, as far as the concept of crypto goes, needs to be accessible to people outside of just those who are, understand the technology or they have the risk tolerance to be able to speculate on some of these games. They need to understand the fundamental reasons why crypto exists and to be able to participate in it in a meaningful and educated way. And so it started as a podcast, and it eventually became an incubator of sorts where we were helping creators launch their first podcast, their first newsletter, who have then gone on to become superstars in their own right in different ecosystems, whether it be on Base, on Solana, or Bitcoin. They're leading communities there. And so I've always seen my role as this facilitator of information, but also a facilitator of technology so that people can go out and just do things that are really great for themselves, but obviously also engage their own communities so that they can onboard them. So hopefully through the work that I do, instead of me just onboarding one person, I'm onboarding like 50, right? Because everyone else is onboarding one other person and so on and so forth. Why I built a channel on Farcaster is I believed, and still do believe, that Farcaster is our best solution for decentralizing the way that we socialize online, right? I do think that as a protocol, Farcaster is doing the best job at decentralizing social, for lack of a better word, even though their tagline is sufficiently decentralized. They do, as a project, have fundamentally the right reasons for building. And they have provided us the tools to be able to build on top of this protocol. I am excited when I see projects like OpenRank building on top of Farcaster. I'm excited when I see other projects that are building on top of Farcaster. But as a community leader, I like to believe that there will be a future where I will be able to onboard the masses through my own channel, right? I do believe that we're leading into that future where Farcaster is going to be underlying everything else, but it's not necessarily where people start. And it's not Warpcast either. It has to be CryptoSapiens. It has to be nature. It has to be anime manga. This is where we build our communities. And so that's why I built why I started a channel, why I started a few actually, because I do have several interests in, outside of crypto. And I wanted to start those channels for that. But my main focus has and continues to be CryptoSapiens. Channel tokens, which we're going to get to, for me, is taking what we are able to do from a social layer into a financial layer, where we're able to merge the two in terms of bringing people onto a platform and sharing our interests with one another, but also rewarding people for contributing to the conversation and moving it forward. So that's like my story with CryptoSapiens and my story with channels. Gloria, are we missing anything here that you think we should be talking about?
No, I think these are really well said. And I think you guys also illustrated really well, like what Cura OpenRank is trying to do here with communities. I want to really stress on this insight or understanding that we have about communities. They are basically the most important societal primitive, right, of the human societies. We always talk about technological primitives in crypto or Web3, but there is actually social primitives like this. I don't actually want to use the word social because people think about social media immediately. So these are like very important primitives, and this is how people spend a lot of their times, with the right people, as what Pichi was saying. That's a fantastic story of how people start a community and come to a community because they feel like they can find, similar people find each other and they can just fork and create their own. So we are very bullish on communities, tribes, channels on Farcaster, and we definitely want to build infrastructure to put channels first. Definitely share with your vision, Humpty, about like onboarding users to a channel, and then that's basically where they hang out and where they experience everything, and then that's basically the end to that wholesome experience. But obviously that can also be leading to discovering some other communities at large. But that should be sufficient. People don't need to be confused going into a space and then trying to struggle to find their own group of people. Cura is basically trying to be this intelligent agent that serves the builders, the community builders, the moderators in basically having different kinds of tools to make this happen. And tokenization is one of the tools Cura provide. The thesis is that if you pick the right time for a community to start to build themselves around the token, rather than let the token override from the very beginning. So there needs to be a community. Then the community manifests certain behaviors they really like. Then you introduce a token to embody that sort of like desired behaviors. You make that reward kind of like intelligent and with like good predictive power of who are the right people to reward, who are the right behaviors to reward. Then you create some sort of like a sustainable, flywheel to build the future further.
I wonder if we can talk about some of the tools that we've been able to enable to our communities to facilitate some of this, I guess, visual reference to community and community activity and community growth. Leaderboards. How have the Cura leaderboards helped you and your community visualize its impact?
The leaderboard is a fantastic tool because, basically you're trying to figure out what's happening in your channel, who your biggest contributors are. Like you kind of like we have 15,000 followers, 3,500 members. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of throughput in the channel. And new people come in all the time. And so this gives you a clear list of, who your top contributors are, plus people in the channel can see where they are placed in the channel, what contributions they're making, right? One of the things we were talking about just a few minutes ago was, what is a channel, right? And what does it mean? And, back to the, origin story is I was in search of community, right? And I took a photo was the first place where I feel like I was part of the community and also building community for other artists, mostly photographers, right? And then, when I took over nature, I wanted to replicate that, right? It had to be a community. So channels are a community, but they're also distribution for people who are making the content. In our case, it's typically landscape photography, right? So people are always looking for distribution. So channels serve multiple functions, right? And that's where the tokenization comes in and the reward layer comes in, right? Because people want to know, where do I have good distribution? Where's the community good? How well am I being rewarded for the effort I'm putting in? If you guys remember, the original DGen landing page said turning content into currency. That's what it used to say, a version of that. And I think, if we go back to like the whole Chris Dixon thinking that I discovered as I came into Farcaster, as a content creator on Instagram, Twitter, and currently LinkedIn, right? All of those social networks are privately owned and controlled for the purpose of creating revenue for the corporation, and the content creators don't really get anything back for the attention they're creating on those platforms. So most content creators use them as sales funnels. And the thing I loved about Farcaster was the direct value capture. If you create value in creating attention, you're going to get value back directly. And that was the promise, right? And so having a leaderboard shows people, how much attention they're creating in a channel. So it's a great tool for the user and for the people who run channels, because maybe there are people in the channel who are creating a lot of attention who I'm not paying enough attention to myself, because as a moderator, the value they get back is impacted by the mods, right? Especially how you've organized your channels. And so we want to help elevate people who are doing a good job as well, like recasting their work or maybe tipping them a little bit extra, right? So it's a tool for us and it's a tool for the user.
And maybe I can add a little bit of, the background story. It was very interesting that we actually worked with Jonathan back and forth several times to look at the channel leaderboard data and tweak that algorithm to actually more more correctly capture what the mods and what the experienced members, top contributors in the channel think about who should be rewarded more, or like who should be rewarded more handsomely. So that is basically the algo is trying to do, is just kind of like capture what is already like a social consensus of like rewarding original art, rewarding certain types of like good quality contribution, and then kind of like automate that into the algo so it runs by itself. So that's really interesting work we did with Jonathan to get prepared for the leaderboard for nature.
Yeah, that was, we went through several iterations of that. Kudos. Like the thing we didn't talk about, like why we loved, working with Gloria and the team there, is they listened to everything I said and took notes and came back and said, here are the changes. Like, I've been in the software game for a while and I know what a good team looks like and how people ship. It was a pleasure and we had a ton of fun doing it.
Pichi, I wonder if you could share with us your experience with channel leaderboards and how that's changed maybe your experience or understanding of your channel and members, or your channel members' experience and understanding of your channel.
Yeah, so one of the things that I really like about it is the discovery of kind of who is in my channel and who is contributing, because that's very hard to see just scrolling through the feed unless you look at every single post. Then you have to look at who's liking it. Then you have to look at the comments. And P.S., you shouldn't be doing it in Workcast because a lot of your community is probably hidden by spam labels. So now you need to look at another client, and that's a lot of work. Whereas the Cura leaderboard like instantly gives me a bunch of people. And I'm definitely a PFP person. I recognize people visually. So when I looked at those first leaderboards that came out, and I said, okay, I recognize a lot of these PFPs. These are great people in my community. I see them trying, I see their stuff. And then I was able to go dig in a little bit more to that next layer and say, okay, how is this person contributing? And I found that 95% of them were great users who were doing exactly as I wanted. There's a few always that are being a little scummy, or maybe they're using tools to auto reply to everyone in the channel. And it's like, well, we're eventually going to see that, right? Like these leaderboards help highlight people to look at. And it's a double-edged sword, because once you're on a leaderboard, everyone looks at you. But by looking into these accounts, we start to see who is behaving in a very authentic way and who's maybe being a little sketchy. So for me, spam and Warpcast are a very difficult conversation. As we know recently, 91% of the people labeled on the network were labeled as might be spam or probably spam. And unfortunately, that means I don't see them in my channel as much as I want. Even though I have channel notifications on, even though I want to see every comment, Warpcast has decided to shelter me from a lot of people in my community, and that's frustrating. So I appreciate that Cura ignores all of those things. It ignores the Warpcast algorithm, and it just says who is engaging in your channel and how do we highlight those people. And now I can look and decide, are those people being spammy or not? And some of that is up to me as the channel moderator to clarify. Unfortunately, we don't have rules and norms anymore that I can point people to necessarily. But since my channel's hyper-sub gated, I do have at least a landing page where I can tell people, this is the kind of stuff we want to see. This is the kind of stuff that's frowned upon. And people are starting to get it organically because they are seeing, look by example, right? If you want to see who the Warpcast algorithm loves, look at the Warpcast rewards board. It's very clear. You could model your behavior on what those casters are doing. So the same thing in my channel. If you see people that are at the top of the anime manga leaderboard, maybe you should look at what are they casting? How are these people behaving? And when you start to look at their casting patterns, you see that they're casting a lot of original stuff. They're trying to post, almost every day or every other day. They also hang out in the channel and comment and like other people's posts. It's not just about their own cast. And I think carrots are better than sticks. I would rather people see the leaderboard, model their behavior on it, rather than give them a 100-point list of things not to do. So I really appreciate this because I'm highlighting people regardless of what Warpcast thinks of them, regardless of what, Moxie or any of these other systems think. You have a chance to be a superstar inside of this channel if you cast great content that people like, and if you're a very, chill person who interacts with other people authentically. Other community members recognize that, they start to interact back with you, and now we see the network effects of good content in a very small space. So that's why I'm super excited about these leaderboards. I like that they're channel specific, that what somebody does in Nature or CryptoSapiens doesn't matter. All that matters is what they do in my channel and how they're behaving in my channel. And every channel can have their own culture, their own things that they value, and we don't have to worry about what you do on the rest of Farcaster. It's all about this one space. And not every channel is a community. So I think that's okay too. Like, this might not be for every single channel. Every channel doesn't need a token. Every channel doesn't need a leaderboard. And I don't want people to feel pressured that no one's going to ever cast in your channel without these things. There's lots of other incentive systems going out there, right? You can incentivize with DGen. You can incentivize with Moxie. You can have Moxie fan tokens. Like, now, as a channel host, you have a buffet of options. And some of these options are going to work for you and your community, and some aren't. But I implore people to think, like, what are the main problems that you see with Warpcast and Farcaster overall? How can your channel be different and solve them? And is a leaderboard right for you? And what I think is super cool is that you can ask for this leaderboard and look at it, but you don't necessarily have to launch a token the next day. You can use it as a data point. You can just request a channel leaderboard right from the Cura frame. I've done it for several of my channels. I'm never going to make tokens for those channels. That's not what they're for. They're for very specific purposes and not for community building. But do I still get super valuable insight? Absolutely. So this is something that every channel host can use. And by participating and having Cura, as part of your channel, you're not locking yourself into guaranteeing a token launch. You're locking yourself into seeing your channel in a new and different way that you're not going to get that insight from any other tool we have or from Warpcast itself.
That's quite a comprehensive view, and I appreciate that very thoughtful response. One thing I'll say from my personal experience is that the leaderboard, if anything, I've used it more as a mirror to look at myself. Because while I may have sounded, as I pitched CryptoSapiens earlier, as someone who has been very thoughtful about how they've developed their community over 3 years, as I positioned that community in Farcaster or on Farcaster, it wasn't very clear the objective for anyone that was landing on or in the channel. And so when I started this process with OpenRank, I had to be almost critical of myself and looking at the people who were active, the type of activity that was happening in the channel through that, kind of process. And now with the leaderboard showing me the activity over 3 weeks since we launched it in our channel, I've seen the diversity of activity change, but also the contributions become a lot more focused. Because there's a very clear mission as to what we are doing on Farcaster. It connects to our story outside of Farcaster, but it's much more clear what people should be doing in this channel. And what brings me a lot of joy is going to my channel or wherever I can find my leaderboard and seeing the rankings change on a daily basis, seeing how people are approaching my score, because I consider myself to be one of the most active. Obviously, as a channel owner and moderator, I am one of the most active, but I'd love to see people challenging that, because I don't think that I should always be number one. I feel like I should be number 2 or 3. If people understand why the channel exists and people contribute alongside that vision of that channel, there's no reason why they shouldn't be number one. And I love that. And like I said, I've seen dormant accounts on my channel reactivate. And that to me is like re-energizing and reinvigorating, because I get to see them actually solving a problem for this community. Now, the next step to that is like, how can we solve these problems collaboratively? And so to that effect, today, the day of recording, I announced that Nature and CryptoSapiens have swapped tokens. This is something that I shared with the OpenRank team from the very beginning. I've been around this space long enough to know the value of token swaps. There was a time where DAOs, when they were at their highest point, were sharing tokens into each other's treasury. Firstly, as a signal of alignment to each other, but also as a way of connecting their stories and the way that they drove towards their mission together. And so when I thought about launching a channel token for CryptoSapiens, one of the first things that I thought was, I want to do things collaboratively, and if this token can enable some collaboration, fantastic. So this is the first and won't be the last token swap that CryptoSapiens does. But it really just makes me super excited about this new opportunity that we have for collaboration on Farcaster as well.
I really trust your vision. So like the idea, you had me at the idea, I didn't need convincing. The platform that we're on, Farcaster, is an innovator's playground. We're here to experiment, right? And encourage experimentation and try new things. And so like in the spirit of like, FAFO, right? We're just going to try things and see what kind of an impact they have. I was thinking about, what would be the challenge for the nature people with Cabal, and I'll talk to you about that, later. But it opens up possibilities, and it gives them exposure to another interesting token from another channel. That's what we're here for, right? We're here to do all these cool things on a daily basis. And that's why, I love being here, because it's constantly changing.
My community, by the way, is voting that I burn all the nature tokens. So, there's that too, because by the way, that is a really interesting mechanic,
right?
Or mechanism in tokenomics that allow for a token to become deflationary. I think it's your community coming to my channel, because I don't think I've seen these people before that are asking me to burn the nature token, which again goes to show that these token swaps aren't limited to what the intention was.
Right.
There's an opportunity that the community can contribute and add a new layer as well.
I love it. No, it's really great, because this is where I think the next level gets unlocked, because I have people in my community that may not necessarily know about your communities, but it's something where I can now start introducing people to say, hey, if you've had a great time in this community, here's some other communities that are set up in a very similar way. And you have to go into their community and participate authentically, by their rules, by their stuff. But there are other places on Farcaster that are friendly and open and that are looking to reward great content. Because I'm sure every creator on Farcaster, in my opinion, should be on CryptoSapiens because we learn a lot from each other. We talk a lot. I have 3 or 4 people that post to my channel every day that make videos or make their own unique art. They should definitely be in CryptoSapiens. Now, should everyone in anime manga be in nature? That's maybe a wider stretch, right? But do every single one of them probably have a great picture on their phone that they could share? Yes. So this is where we can tell people you might not see the direct connection on day one of what do these channels have in common. But when you start looking deeper, we're trying to give people a place to build their network and community authentically. So if you've got a great photo on your phone or on your camera that could fit into one of the themes that, by the way, nature has every day, there's always a cool theme, you could go and authentically participate in this channel and potentially get rewarded for it. And if you're a creator, let's, plug you into CryptoSapiens and see how you can up your game. How can we get more people to see your content? How do we get more people to see your art? How do you better leverage the existing communities on Farcaster? And then I imagine that in 6 months, there's 20 communities that now have tokens. And we can say, instead of randomly casting into the void or casting into a channel where you're not going to be seen, now channels are not equal. Channels that are well moderated, that are well curated, and that are rewarding and paying for good content are going to really start to bubble up on the surface. And I'm not offended if somebody says, hey, Pichi, I don't know anything about anime. I don't have anything to contribute here. That's okay. But there's going to be 50 other great channels you can participate in. And maybe you can just be a spectator in my channel or, decide, I want to learn and, come and do some comments. Like, I think a lot of people got excited when they did that initial claim and realized they had never cast a top level cast in anime manga. And they still had tokens to claim because they had participated authentically by engaging with the content in that channel. So even if you're not a creator, even if you don't have a ton of original content, that doesn't mean you still can't participate in these channels. And that doesn't mean you have to pick just one. You can pick many communities to be a part of. And I think that's what makes me excited is that right this second, I don't really have a good idea of how to collaborate with the 2 channels, but maybe in a month I will. And maybe in 2 months, there will be another channel that aligns really perfectly with mine. Or maybe we decide to work together as a group and come up with something that, can create content that matches, one of these 3 channels, share it in CryptoSapiens as a content creator, and then go and share it in anime, manga, or nature. You have a choice. You can pick which one you want to do and start to show that power of channels collaborating. Because then I think that's going to show everybody on Farcaster, you don't have to worry about these crazy spam labels and falling through the cracks. You can pick your communities, lean all into them, and you're going to end up doing really, really well and building your network organically, which is, I think, super important because that's what matters is the true connections to communities you build and behaving in a super authentic way, leaning into the channels that are leaning into you is going to be what takes this from a bunch of people randomly talking about crypto to a bunch of people building relationships that happen to be, solidified on a crypto background where occasionally we're going to make a little bit of money. And that's a really exciting narrative. And that's really exciting to bring on more creators and to bring on more people that just want to participate. It's like, you don't have to be the person who makes the video or casts the photograph. You can be the person who collects it or who posts thoughtful commentary about it and shares it with your network and still do just as well.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Pichi. And let's also recognize 2 things you said there that at least hit for me. The first one was people didn't need to necessarily cast into the channel, but just comment thoughtfully. So the opportunity to earn is available beyond just those who are channel members. The other is the fact that we're not necessarily limited to collaborating amongst ourselves who are channel token holders or channel token communities like CryptoSapiens, Nature, and Anime Manga. this could go beyond. Like, we can go into the higher channel and that community and say, let's swap some tokens, because as a lifestyle brand, there's a huge connection between lifestyle and anime. Okay, let's be real. You've been to Japan. You know that is accurate AF. Or in terms of like lifestyle and nature, I buy way too many clothes to go hiking because I love the brand and I love the materiality of that clothing. I don't even hike. Okay, so there's a connection here beyond just this idea that we need to collaborate amongst ourselves. This is, I think, something that can grow throughout the entire Farcaster ecosystem and outside of it. We don't know what that is, and I think that's what's exciting. Is the collaborative piece is brand new. That's why in the newsletter that I launched earlier today, I think I put it as a new paradigm for social engagement and rewarding and collaboration. It's there. So as we close up, because I want to keep this under an hour, we've been pretty good about keeping these short. Gloria, I'm putting it in your hands. Tell us, how does this connect to the story of OpenRank and Cura and channel tokens and the future vision as to what you're building based on what you've heard so far?
One of the key insights I took from everybody along the way is that curation is key, and high quality content and encourage like meaningful conversations, meaningful engagement in the channel needs to be authentic, needs to be kind of like recognized in an automated way. So that sort of like curation is, the key thing that we're trying to build into the leaderboard and build into the Cura tooling in different ways, like including like automated invites, automated approvals based on certain criteria, distributing rewards to people based on leaderboard contributions. Tokenizing this is really to lead the community into a direction to become its own economy, to make every member thinking about it not just as like, okay, I'm contributing, doing something fun, but also thinking about collectively, this community, if everybody is doing great things, collectively there is going to be a value created that's bigger than everybody in the community. And as everybody in the community, they can also capture that value through that token's future potential. So I think that mentality shift is something we're really eager to see as we have more channels experiment with the tokens and have more members get to understand what channel tokens are supposed to mean for the channels already have it. And another exciting direction we're heading into is to break free from the limitations of Warpcast in terms of like the front end form factor, right? So what if you can actually have different feeds? What if you can have a feed just for like new members who are like really new in town and didn't really have much of a recognition, for them to also show up in a different kind of like, feed? What if you can have like, amateur photographers, or you can have like people who are particular interested in certain topics in like creator economy can actually have their own feed. So these are really interesting, directions we're going, and we think that will also serve the channels in a more meaningful way to kind of like really customize it for everybody.
Any last words, Jonathan or Pichi, about what Gloria said, or just generally any advice you might have for someone choosing to launch their own token?
I think anybody who's interested in launching a token for their channel should speak with Gloria. I've referred at least one or two people to her. If anything, I think they're going to learn some stuff and also get a closer look at what, Cura is working on, and maybe see a little bit into the future of curating channels.
Yeah, and I would just tell folks to install that Cura frame. It's a V2 frame. You can install it and you can stalk all the other channels. You can see how you're doing on other channels. And if you, really care about a channel and you don't like the way it's looking now and their leaderboard doesn't look, the way you want it to, you should reach out to the channel host and talk to them about what is the future of this channel. What do they value? What do they want to do with it? Because some folks don't want to do all the work, and that's totally okay. But if you're passionate about a particular community and it's not thriving right now, I think this is a great way to take some action, to make sure hosts know these tools exist, make sure hosts know that channels have changed dramatically over the last few months. So if they've unplugged from Farcaster and Warpcast and coming back, it's worth taking a new look, because I think community is what drives these changes. And if we as community members, ask our favorite channels to start looking at and implementing these tools, that's the best way, because a lot of people just don't know. If they're not plugged into Farcaster every day, they don't see all these cool things that are happening. So share that love, and participate in the channels that you think are doing well. And if channels aren't doing well, give them a heads up and give them a chance to make it better. And if they never make it better, make your own channel.
Okay, can every one of you say one sentence to, I totally agree with Pichi. Not every channel is a community, but let's just say if there is a community builder mod with that sort of like intention, try to transform a channel into a community. What is your one sentence advice to them?
I would say have a North Star. Be very clear about what problem you're solving. Write it out. And then start onboarding people to your channel. But don't do it before that.
I would have to say ditto on that, Humpty. I actually wrote a memo to our channel mods about the purpose of the channel, the experience I wanted people to have when they came in, and also how I wanted our creators to feel, as a part of the experience, which is ironic that you say that, because that's, and that was happening all around the time of bring on mods, preparing for the token launch and the leaderboard. So that was awesome advice.
And I would say, echoing the sentiment, not all channels are communities. Some channels are just topics, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be more than that. I have a few channels that are very topic specific, and I don't expect people to be there every day. I expect them to come through the channel when they need specific information, and I want the channel to look good and feel good for finding that information, but it's not necessarily a community. So don't feel that you have to change your channel to be something that it's not.
All right. And with that, thank you, everybody.